Hi everyone, my name is FlygonHG, and this is the video of my attempt at a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Emerald using only Ground Type Pokémon. To see what I define as Hardcore Nuzlocke Rules, check out the description below. But in short, no items in battle, no overleveling past the gym leader's ace, and we're playing on set mode. So I know I just did an Emerald Hardcore Nuzlocke for my last video, where I only used normal type Pokémon, but a viewer suggested that I try an Emerald Hardcore Nuzlocke using only Ground Type Pokémon, and it sounded like a lot of fun. So here we are. But in the future, I'll try to bounce around between games for more flavor so that there aren't two videos in a row of the exact same game. Anyways, Ground Type Pokémon are really cool. I think Ground Type is my favorite type of Pokémon. Obviously, my favorite Pokémon is part Ground Type, but so are a lot of my other favorite Pokémon, including my favorite starters, Swampert and Torterra. I think if I was going to be a gym leader, I'd be a Ground Type gym leader, because Ground Types also tend to have a lot of really unique secondary typings. In fact, dual Ground Types exist for every combination of typing except for Ground Fighting and Ground Fairy. Get with that, Game Freak. Anyways, in Emerald, there's a solid set of Ground Type Pokémon, including the starter Swampert. Yes, I know that Mudkip is not a Ground Type until it evolves into Marshtomp, but I'm going to be using it anyways. I'll explain why in a sec. So we have a total of 10 evolution lines to choose from. Though unfortunately we won't be able to evolve Nincada since it loses its ground typing upon evolution, and both Rhydon and Donphan are Safari Zone encounters, so I'll have to choose between the two. But that's still 9 Pokemon, so let's see how it goes. Quick reminder before I start, I play with Species Clause, so I'll be able to reroll encounters until I get a unique encounter, but I can only use one of each unique evolution line. Okay, let's do this. I start the game by picking up Mudkip as my starter. I name him Dwayne. Now, again, I know that Mudkip isn't a ground type, so it feels a little disingenuous to use him until he evolves into Marshtomp, but there's really no other option here. There's only one other ground type to catch before Roxanne's gym, a Nincada from Route 116. I name her Basalt, and unfortunately, it's next to impossible to beat Roxanne with just Basalt, at the current level cap at least. I would need to use Sand Attack and get incredibly lucky with avoiding attacks from all 3 of Roxanne's Pokemon. But even then, I think I'd run out of PP on my moves before I could make it through all of her Pokemon, since Basalt isn't quite a powerhouse hitter. So instead, I'll just use Dwayne, who is able to handle Roxanne pretty easily with some water guns. Don't worry though, there's still going to be a handful of problematic battles that we'll have to deal with, so this will still be a pretty tough challenge. During our battle with Roxanne, Dwayne levels up, which, remember, is not breaking the level cap, because according to my rules, the level cap is only in effect until the start of the gym battle. That level up is enough to evolve Dwayne into Marshtomp and give him that ground typing. Unfortunately, since Dwayne leveled up twice in the gym battle, he missed out on Mudshot at level 16, which is really unideal. We don't learn another ground type move until level 52 when Swampert learns Earthquake. Ah well. Next up is Brawly, who's quite a pain to deal with. Before battling him, we do head to Granite Cave and catch a Geodude, who we name Granite. And Granite is going to be incredibly important in this run, because she knows Mud Sport. If we can keep her alive, Mudsport will be invaluable for the rest of this run. After hitting the level cap with some grinding, we challenge Brawly. I lead Dwayne, who starts hitting Machop with water guns. I make sure to get Machop in the red so that Brawly will waste one of his super potions on Machop instead of using it on his Makuhita. A few more water guns manages to take out the Machop. Next is Meditite, but as long as you keep attacking it, it can't do any damage. Its only damaging move is Focus Punch. So after a few water guns, it goes down. And then last is Makuhita. A water gun does solid damage as Makuhita uses Bulk Up. I'm in range of a crit, but I kinda need to risk it. So I fire off a second water gun as Vital Throw leaves me with 4 HP. Then I switch to Basalt, who can hopefully take care of the rest. We trade damage back and forth for a few turns. It's not looking all that good until Basalt gets a critical hit with Scratch, which knocks Makuhita into the red. Unfortunately, on that same turn, Makuhita retaliates with Reversal, which kills Basalt. Granite comes out, and thanks to a few good magnitude rolls, she takes out the Makuhita even after Brawly uses a super potion. This does get us the second gym badge, but we've got a pretty big problem now. Up next is a rival battle with May, who has a Grovyle with Absorb. The recently departed Basalt was our only Pokemon not 4 times weak to that move. Fortunately, we still have a shot if we teach Dwayne Rock Tomb. May starts with a Wingull, who goes down to a single Rock Tomb. Then, out comes the Grovyle. However, since Absorb only has 20 base power, Dwayne can actually take 3 of them if Grovyle doesn't crit. On the first turn, Grovyle hits an Absorb, and we retaliate with a Rock Tomb. This lowers Grovyle's speed, which allows us to outspeed it on the next turn. Grovyle does hang on with a sliver, and it hits back hard with an Overgrow boosted Absorb. But one more Rock Tomb should knock it out. Well, that's attempt 1. Granite doesn't even outspeed here, and she gets knocked out by a single Absorb, so it's time for a reset. The first bit of attempt 2 is pretty similar. Dwayne takes care of Roxanne no problem, but this time I make sure that my XP is low enough so that I don't level up twice, and Dwayne learns Mud Shot when he evolves. Then it's time for our second go at Brawly. Unfortunately, during a moment of pure stupidity, I accidentally overleveled Dwayne over the level cap. This is my first playthrough streaming on Twitch, and I got distracted by talking to chat, so I wasn't really paying attention when I was grinding. I'll need to be a bit better at multitasking while streaming. But if you want to distract me into making horrendous mistakes like this, go ahead and follow me on Twitch. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope to do it more. Anyways, I try to eke out a win against Brawly without Dwayne, but it starts out with Granite hitting the worst possible magnitude roll, and then on the second turn, going down to a critical hit Karate Chop. So things aren't looking great. But then Basalt actually starts to put in some work. She gets a clutch critical hit to kill the Machop, and then the Meditite comes out. And by the time we knock it out, we've gained all our health back using Leech Life. During this time, Basalt also gets a bunch more crits. She's seriously killing it. Queen Basalt might actually be able to pull this off. Makuhita is of course last, so we start doing damage with Cut. We go back and forth for a while, but Makuhita is just a little too much for Queen Basalt to handle, and she goes down. So that's the end of attempt 2. Okay, so in attempt 3, I somehow managed to put my 2 brain cells together and get to Brawly with a Marshtomp that knows Mud Shot and isn't overleveled. I seriously don't know how I did it either. On this third attempt at Brawly, I start with Dwayne, who immediately gets off a Mud Shot on Machop. Then I use Mud Slap so that Machop hangs on with a sliver, which makes Brawly waste a Super Potion here. I go for another Mud Slap, hoping to lower Machop's accuracy so that I don't take any more damage, but ironically I miss the Mud Shot on the next turn as Machop goes for a Bulk Up. A few turns later and Machop goes down, but I've already taken a really huge chunk of damage with Dwayne. The Meditite comes in, but as usual it goes down without any problems. Brawly also wastes his second Super Potion here, so that's nice. Makuhita is last and immediately loses a huge chunk of his health to a Mud Shot as he goes for a Bulk Up. Unfortunately, a Citrus Berry means he survives a follow-up Water Gun as he uses another Bulk Up. So from here, I switch to Basalt, who starts slowly doing damage with Cut. Eventually, we get to a point where Basalt will get taken out by another Reversal, and we need Basalt for the upcoming rival fight. So unfortunately, it means I have to switch Granite in on a Reversal, which knocks him out in one shot. Rest well, Granite. After that, a Water Gun from Dwayne finishes off Makuhita, winning us the second gym badge. Man, Brawly is really brutal in a lot of these challenges. Losing Granite is unideal. She would have been incredibly useful for the next few gym challenges we have coming up. But now that we have Dwayne and Basalt, at least May isn't too much of an issue. We're able to smack her Wingull down with another Rock Tomb, just like last time. Then Grovyle comes out, and we hit it with a Rock Tomb for some damage. Then I switch to Basalt, who takes care of the Grovyle with a few Leech Lives. We were at risk to a crit there, but this time I couldn't really play around it. After Grovyle goes down, Dwayne takes out the Slugma, winning us the battle and getting us our furthest attempt yet. Since there aren't any other ground encounters before the third gym, we go straight to Watson's gym. Now you might be thinking that the electric type gym in a ground type only challenge should be a piece of cake. And yet, it ends up being a pretty hard piece of cake. We lead Basalt into Watson's Voltorb, and I just start hitting sand attacks. Voltorb starts using Rollout, but eventually it misses. Then it goes for a self-destruct, which thankfully doesn't hurt too much. Electrike comes out next, so I start using a few more sand attacks. Then I switch to Dwayne, who avoids a quick attack. 2 Mud Slaps kill the Electrike, and we haven't taken any damage. Magneton comes out next and hits a 55% accurate Supersonic, and I obviously hit myself in confusion, because what's a Watson fight without status conditions? I switch to Basalt to shake off the confusion, and then I switch Dwayne back in on a Sonic Boom. Magneton hits another Sonic Boom, and then I obviously miss a Mud Shot, because when a move says 95% accurate, it really means 9.5% accurate. Another Mud Shot manages to connect with the Magneton and knock it out. Last is my Net Trick, and thankfully my next 2 Mud Shots hit, winning us the battle. But if the Electric Gym in a ground-only challenge is this hard, I'm pretty worried about what's coming up next. With the ability to use Rock Smash, I can now go to Route 112, where I can catch another ground-type Pokemon, a Numel. I name her Igneous. After that, we do some training, and it's time to take on Flannery and her fire types. She leads Numel, and I lead Dwayne, who one-shots the Numel with a water gun. A Mudshot one-shots the Slugma that comes out next. And then Camerupt comes out, who actually does hold on from a water gun, and it sets up a sunny day. The sun is really dangerous with Flannery's Torkoal in the back, so this is looking a bit scary. Flannery heals the Camerupt, and I hit a reduced power water gun. Then I switch to Igneous, who ignores an Attract. Camerupt hits a pretty weak tackle, and then Igneous pulls out a monstrous Magnitude 9 to kill her fully evolved form. Good job, Igneous. Last is Torkoal. Now, Overheat in the Sun has a small chance to one-shot Igneous from this range, but we need to risk it. Igneous came to play, and she hits a critical hit Magnitude 7, which brings Torkoal into the yellow. Torkoal then retaliates with an Overheat. She gets a crit. Of course she does. You really hate to see it. Dwayne comes back out and finishes off Torkoal with a Mudshot, winning us the 4th gym badge, but I'm losing team members as fast as I'm getting them. Igneous wasn't on the team for long, but she gave it everything she had, and we couldn't have won the battle without her. She deserves a long rest. And at least Queen Basalt survives. We now also get access to the desert on Route 111 and Mirage Tower, which means we get 2 more encounters. I start by finding a Sandshrew on Route 111, which is great. Not because of the Sandshrew so much, but because it means that now I'm guaranteed to get a Trapinch in Mirage Tower. And then later we can pick up a Claydol at Sky Pillar. If I had gotten a Baltoy on Route 111, it would have been a 50-50 chance of Sandshrew or Trapinch in Mirage Tower, and then we'd be down 1 encounter. I name the Sandshrew Sandstone, and then in Mirage Tower, I catch a Trapinch and name him Quartz. Did I only do this challenge so that I could use Flagon? Maybe. After some training, Sandstone evolves into Sandslash, and then it's time to face my father and his powerful Slaking. I spent the better part of 2 days brainstorming a plan for how to beat Norman, and I eventually landed on what seemed to be a pretty flawless plan, save for a critical hit or 2. It's not ideal to have to bank on dodging a crit. I obviously know full well how that can turn out, but under the circumstances, it's my best bet. The plan is to knock out Norman's first 3 Pokemon with Sandstone, and then switch to Basalt and abuse Dig to take advantage of Slaking's loafing turns. It's a pretty solid plan. But the funny thing about plans is that they never quite work out how you think they will, right? So right off the bat, Norman Spinda goes for Psybeam instead of a Teeter Dance, which would have activated my Person Berry. Instead, that's some chip damage on Sandstone that I wasn't accounting for. After knocking out the Spinda, Vigoroth comes in. And I thought that I EV'd Sandstone to outspeed the Vigoroth, but evidently this Vigoroth has a plus speed nature, and Vigoroth gets a critical hit with Slash. So by the time it goes down, I'm already pretty low on health. Thankfully, the Linoon does exactly what I expected it to do. It goes for a Belly Drum, which allows Sandstone to knock it out in one shot. Last is Slaking, but we're at low enough health that a Facade will kill us, so I need to switch and take a hit with Dwayne. Thankfully, the Slaking doesn't crit, so Dwayne lives. On Slaking's loafing turn, I switch to Basalt. Now, the plan is to take a hit with Basalt, Toxic Slaking, and then Dig so that Slaking can never hit us. But when I go for a Toxic, Slaking uses Yawn for some reason. So now I have a Poison Slaking, which means Facade will do double the damage, and Basalt can't use Dig because she'll fall asleep on the next turn. It means I have to sack Sandstone to shake off the Yawn. So first, I switch to Sandstone on Slaking's loafing turn. Then I click Sand Attack, fully expecting Slaking to knock me out with a boosted Facade. But instead, he goes for a Feint Attack, and we survive with 2 HP. This is insane. The only way that this is possible is that the AI saw that both Feint Attack and Facade were kills on Sandstone, so it randomly chose between the 2 options. But there were also a few low damage rolls with Feint Attack that didn't kill Sandstone, and that's what was rolled. In other words, this is stupid lucky, because it means we get off a Sand Attack, and that means that on the next turn that Slaking can attack, it goes for a Feint Attack, since it never misses. This gives us the opportunity to switch into Basalt, who tanks the Feint Attack, and then from here, we've timed it so that Queen Basalt will be underground when Slaking attacks, and above ground when it's loafing. After a few turns of poison and dig damage, teeny tiny Basalt has knocked out the massive Slaking, winning us the 5th gym badge. You know, as unlucky as the RNG of some battles may seem, it's important to acknowledge that sometimes the opposite is true. It's just a lot easier to remember the times that you're on the losing side of RNG. Oh, also, I almost forgot. Suck it, Dad. Now that we have the HM for Surf, we can pick up the Good Rod and backtrack to Meteor Falls to fish up a Barboach named Lapis, or if you're an expert in the French language like myself, Lapis. Now, before we get to the 6th gym in Fortree, we have to fight our rival one more time. And this time, her Grovyle has Leaf Blade, a move that has a solid chance to one-shot almost all of my team. This is especially bad because Grovyle can also outspeed my whole team. I spent a long time brainstorming with Twitch chat trying to figure out how to deal with this, and the best strategy we could come up with was a double team strategy, which is a terrible strategy for Nuzlocks because it banks your entire run on the AI missing. But that's the only play I could find here. I start by sand attacking Maze Slugma with Quartz until it's at -6 accuracy. Then I switch in Sandstone and I start setting up double teams. I also set up a Sandstorm, which ups Sandstone's evasion thanks to its Sand Veil ability. You'll notice that Slugma still hits a lot of Embers here, which clearly shows why this strategy is incredibly unreliable. Thankfully, none of these Embers burn though. I've also taught Sandstone's secret power so that we can kill the Slugma without making contact so we don't accidentally get burned from its Flame Body ability. After Slugma, Lombre comes out, but it goes down to a return after it barely does anything with Fake Out. Last is the Grovyle, and this is the moment of truth. Thanks to the Sandstorm chip, a Silk Scarf boosted return will be enough to one-shot it, but first we need it to miss a Leaf Blade. So I click return, and then I outspeed the Grovyle, meaning that this was all kind of a complete waste of time. But I did the calcs, and the only way that this Grovyle doesn't outspeed Sandstone here is if it has a minus speed nature. So again, I got stupid lucky. After that close brush with death, I train up Lapis until he evolves into Whiscash. Then, after teaching Lapis the TM for Ice Beam, we take on Winona. And for the first time since Roxanne, we get a relatively straightforward gym battle where nothing terrible goes wrong. Thanks to some special attack EVs, Lapis is able to one-shot the Swablu and the Tropius with Ice Beam. Pelipper comes out third and starts doing that usual Pelipper crap of wasting time with Protects. I switch to Dwayne and hit a few Rock Tombs until I get confused from a Supersonic. Then I switch to Sandstone and start dealing damage as Pelipper heals and then tries to hit a Supersonic. I need to do a few switches to get Dwayne back in unconfused, but once I do, Pelipper goes down, and then Skarmory comes out. From here, we bounce around between Dwayne and Lapis as Skarmory primarily goes for sand attacks. After a few turns, Lapis is in without any accuracy drops, and he takes out the Skarmory with a Surf. Last is Altaria, who wastes time with the Dragon Dance, as she always does, and then goes down to a single Ice Beam. All things considered, a fairly easy 6th badge. On our way to Moss Deep City, Dwayne evolves into Swampert, and Quartz evolves into Vibrava, just one more badge away from a Flygon. We also head to the Safari Zone to catch a Rhyhorn. I name him Obsidian. Obsidian joins the team as our 6th Pokemon, giving us a full team for the first time in this run. But since Rhyhorn doesn't learn Earthquake until level 52, and Rhydon doesn't learn it until level 58, which is after the final level cap, I decide to delay Obsidian's evolution. So for now, he's just a Benchwarmer. Now it's time for Tate and Liza, but lest viewers forget that I'm an absolute idiot, I accidentally overleveled Dwayne here, so we can't use him for the battle. This poses a bit of a problem, because Tate and Liza hit pretty hard, so double surfs from Dwayne and Lapis would have been really great. Oh well. Tate and Liza lead Xatu and Claydol, and I lead Quartz and Lapis. Xatu goes for a Calm Mind, and Claydol uses Earthquake as we hit Claydol hard with a Crunch and a Surf. On the next turn, Quartz uses Fly to dodge a Psychic from Xatu, and Lapis hits it with an Ice Beam. Fly and Surf take out the Xatu and the Claydol on the next turn, but Lapis is really low on health as Lunatone and Solrock come in. Thankfully, the way that the double battle switch-ins work in Gen 3 means that I was able to get off a Surf on the Lunatone. So a Crunch and then another Surf will take out Lunatone, but it means that Lapis will surely go down to an attack from Solrock. Unless it decides to go for a Solar Beam, well that's the game. A Surf and a Crunch take out the Solrock before it can get off a Solar Beam, winning us a deathless 7th badge. I genuinely didn't think I'd make it out of this battle in one piece. With that new level cap, it's finally time to evolve Quartz into a Flygon. Welcome to the team, you beautiful beast. We also get access to our final ground type encounter, a Claydol in Sky Pillar. I name it Slate, and Slate is going to be huge for the rest of this run, because Slate can learn Cosmic Power. Finally, a setup move that will make some of these big fights a bit more manageable. For some reason, Slate can't learn Calm Mind, which is just dumb, but Cosmic Power is better than nothing. But now with Slate joining the team, I have to make the hard decision to bench Basalt. As great as she's been in this run, I can't afford to keep her on the team anymore. and I'd rather her live out a peaceful retirement in the box than risk her dying in an upcoming fight. So, with Basalt in retirement, it's time to take on Juan. And the strategy for this fight is to set up Cosmic Powers and a substitute with Slate. But to do that safely, I need to stall the Love Disc out of PP on most of her attacks. I do this by switching between Dwayne and Lapis, making sure to use Protects when optimal. After a while, Love Disc is out of Sweet Kisses and Water Pulses, so it's stuck using Flail and Attract. This gives me the opportunity to switch in Slate, set up 6 Cosmic Powers to max out my defense, and also set up a substitute. Once that's taken care of, I start knocking out Juan's Pokemon. Once Love Disc goes down to a few Psychics, Whiscash comes out, but it goes down to a Solar Beam. Celio comes out next, and goes down to a Solar Beam as well. Then Kingdra comes out, and starts using Double Team. We're kinda playing a dangerous game here since Psychic has a low amount of PP, but I get lucky and hit a critical hit Psychic on the second turn before Kingdra is able to fully set up Double Teams. Gotta love critical hits, right? Last is Crawdad, who also goes down to a single Solar Beam. And that's the 8th and final gym badge. The final challenge, as always, is the Elite Four. And in order to level up my Pokemon, I fight some of the trainers on Victory Road, including this completely optional trainer with a Slaking, who of course has an Ice Beam, which of course crits, which of course kills Sandstone in one shot. That, sucks. Really dumb mistake on my part, and Sandstone was a really good Pokemon. But it does mean that Basalt is coming out of retirement. Welcome back, Queen. Well, after that stupidly avoidable loss, I train everyone up to level 55, including Obsidian, who evolves into Rhydon. Before the Elite Four, here's our final team. Let's see if we've got what it takes. First is Sydney. So I lead Obsidian, whose only job is to eat up an Intimidate and a Sand Attack. Good job, King. Then I switch to Flygon, who one-shots the Mightyena with Earthquake. Shiftry comes out next and goes down to 2 Dragon Claws. But not before giving me a free boost to my attack with Swagger, after I shake off the confusion with a Person Berry, of course. Thanks, Sydney. The rest of Sydney's team goes down to a single hit apiece, winning us the battle. Sydney is never really any trouble, especially because his Pokemon are leveled so much lower than the Elite Four level cap. Next up is Phoebe, who leads with a Dusclops that always uses Protect, so I take the opportunity to set up a substitute with Slate. Then I set up 6 Cosmic Powers, as Dusclops wastes a lot of time going for nonsense moves. Again, the AI in Gen 3 gets really confused by Substitute. I acknowledge that I've used Substitute plus setup moves in like my last 3 videos, but in most cases, it's really the only reliable way to win these challenges. Anyways, after a few more turns, 2 Psychics take out the Dusclops. Next is Banet, who goes down to 2 Psychics as my substitute stays up. The second Banet comes out next, but it goes down to a single critical hit Psychic. Again, really gotta love when it's me getting the critical hits. The second Dusclops comes out next and goes down to a few Psychics, but it manages to break our sub and we can't set up another one here. So when Sableye comes out, I switch to Quartz, who knocks it out with a single Earthquake, winning us the battle. Third is Glacia, and I don't really have a great plan for this one. I lead Slate into Celio, since it always sets up with a Hail. I set up a sub, and then on the next turn I go for a Psychic as Celio retaliates with a Body Slam, which doesn't break my sub. A second Psychic knocks out the Celio. Then, Glacia's first Glalie comes out. But it goes down to 2 Psychics as an Ice Beam breaks my sub. But now we're in a bit of trouble as the second Celio comes out. I try to set up a sub, but Celio hits a Blizzard to break it. I go for a second sub, hoping that Blizzard will miss, but it doesn't. So next turn, I switch in Lapis, who gets hit hard by a Blizzard. 3 Blizzard hits in a row is pretty damn lucky, Glacia. I go for an Earthquake as Celio sets up Hail, which now gives Blizzard perfect accuracy. Another Earthquake leaves Celio with a Sliver as it hits another Blizzard. Glacia heals Celio with a full restore, and I hit another Earthquake for what looks like a little over half health. So on the next turn, I click Rest. And then Celio misses a Blizzard. I thought this was impossible, but actually after checking Bulbapedia, it turns out that Blizzard only has perfect accuracy in a Hailstorm starting in Generation 4. So, the more you know. Anyways, after Lapis wakes up from his rest, he hits an Earthquake to knock out the Celio. Next is Glalie, who outspeeds Lapis and hits him with an Ice Beam. An Earthquake leaves the Glalie in the yellow, but now we're in trouble, especially with the Walrein waiting in the back. Unfortunately, we're gonna need a sack here. So, it's Obsidian's time to shine. I switch him in on an Ice Beam, and even though he does survive the first hit, the Glalie obviously outspeeds and takes him out on the next turn. Thank you for your service, buddy. Quartz comes in to outspeed the Glalie and knock it out with an Earthquake. And then the Walrein comes in. So I switch to Dwayne, and we trade off Ice Beams and Earthquakes. Thankfully, none of Walreign's Ice Beams crit or freeze, so we're able to take out the Walreign with 17 HP remaining. That was scary close, but victory is ours. Fourth is Lance, but his Shelgon is a free setup with Slate since it always starts with a Protect. I've replaced Psychic with Ice Beam, so after I've set up the obligatory 6 Cosmic powers, an Ice Beam takes out the Shelgon. Then Kingdra comes out, and Ice Beam does disappointingly little damage, but fortunately, it wastes time using bad moves, so a few Ice Beams take it out before it can do any real damage. Then from here, Ice Beams knock out the rest of Drake's Dragon types, winning us the 4th and final Elite Four fight. It's kind of absurd how easy Drake is with a halfway decent Ice Beam user. Anyways, last up is the champion Wallace, who is pretty difficult, especially since water types do a lot of damage to all of my ground types. Fortunately, I have a pretty good plan. Wallace starts with Wailord, which has a lot of moves with very low PP. So if we stall the Wailord out of its PP, we can pretty easily set up with Slate, which will make the rest of Wallace's team much more manageable. So I lead with Dwayne. And the first step is to hit Wailord with an Earthquake to lower its HP so that its water spouts do less damage. You know, I end every video by saying to always play around the critical hit, but I've never had to play around at my own critical hit before. This is really bad, because it means that Ludicolo is coming out. And when I switch out to Flygon, Ludicolo just starts setting up double teams. Now, you eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that there's still a lot of time left in this video, so you probably know where this is going. A few bad plays on my end, and some unfortunate misses, mean that Ludicolo is able to wipe my entire team. Mere steps away from the finish line, Attempt 3 ends in an absolute massacre. So with a heavy heart, it's back to square one. If there's a silver lining here, it's that I learned a lot about what works through this playthrough and what doesn't. So with my new breadth of knowledge and a very palpable sense of desperation, Attempt 4 goes much quicker. A few differences to note. First, while I've named most of my Pokemon the same name across all the attempts, the Nincada that I find this time around is a male, so I name it Basalto. There's no replacing Queen Basalt. Next, I've taught Basalto Fury Swipes, since Nincada's Compound Eyes give the move 100% accuracy. This gives me more than enough power to take out Brawly's Makuhita with Dwayne and Basalto alone, meaning that I don't need to sacrifice Granite the Geodude. This also means that Granite lives long enough to evolve into a Graveler, which makes the battle with Watson a cakewalk. It also means I have a much easier time with Flannery, so I'm able to beat her without losing Igneous the Numel. So by the time we get to Norman, we actually have a full team. But we still face some problems here. I lead Sandstone into Norman Spinda so that he'll get experience and level up when the Spinda is defeated. Then I switch into Dwayne, who is able to lower Spinda's speed with a few Rock Tombs. Well, when he hits his attacks at least. I hate moves that aren't 100% accurate so much. After that, I switch to Granite, who shakes off a Teeter Dance with a Persimberry. And thanks to the Rock Tombs, Granite is able to outspeed the Spinda and knock it out with Strength. Norman then sends his Pokemon a bit out of order, electing to send out Slaking next. I think this is because the AI thinks that the Fighting type move Counter is super effective to Granite. So I go for a Rock Smash, hoping to get a defense drop as Slaking goes for a counter. On his Loafing turn, I switch to Sandstone, who I've taught Dig and given max speed EVs to, so that she can outspeed the Slaking. This lets me use Dig to avoid Slaking's attacks. But after a few turns, I start to get a little worried that I'll run out of Dig PP before I can take out Slaking if Norman uses his 2 Hyper Potions here. So I switch to Granite to try and drop his defense with a Rock Smash. Not only does his defense drop, but we also get a crit, which is pretty great. On the next turn, I switch back to Sandslash, who tanks a Feint Attack. Then, on Slaking's Loafing turn, I go for a Poison Sting, which poisons Slaking. I feel like Poison Sting has an 80% chance to poison. I've been poisoned by Poison Sting so many times. After this, it's just a few digs until Slaking goes down. Next up is Vigoroth, who I hit with a Return for about half health. Forgetting that Dig has 60 base power in this game instead of 80, I figure it'll do more damage, but it leaves Vigoroth with a sliver. A critical hit Facade puts me in the red. Then, Norman uses a Hyper Potion as I hit another Return. I'm worried another Return will leave Vigoroth with just a sliver, so I switch to Granite. Vigoroth gets another critical slash here, and then he hits a Feint Attack, which leaves Granite in the red, as I hit a Strength, which leaves Vigoroth in the red. Never did I think that I would have more trouble taking out Norman's Vigoroth than I did taking out his Slaking, but here we are. Next I switch to Basalto, who takes out the Vigoroth with a Leech Life. Last is Linoone, who goes for a Slash as I do a small amount of damage with Fury Swipes. I switch to Igneous on the next round, but Headbutt does way more damage than I thought it would. So in order to get a safe switch to Dwayne, I decide to sack Basalto. But again, this hack imposter is not Queen Basalt, so I literally couldn't care less. Sucks to be you, Basalto. I bring out Dwayne to finish off Linoone, which gets me a pretty sloppy victory. But my dad still sucks. After this, since Igneous is still alive, she evolves into Camerupt. And this makes the next fight against May significantly easier, since Leaf Blade doesn't do much to Igneous. I do end up overleveling Igneous against Winona's gym trainers, but it doesn't really matter, because Winona is still pretty easy with Ice Beams from Lapis, so we can just skip that fight. On this playthrough, I decide to catch a Phanpy instead of a Rhyhorn in the Safari Zone. I name her Ore, but she's gonna go in the box for now. Next up is Tate and Liza, and this time I thought it might be fun to, maybe not overlevel Dwayne. So naturally, I expect this fight to be much easier this time. It's not. I lead Dwayne and Lapis for double surfs, but Xatu and Claydol are both surprisingly fast, so Claydol is able to get off an Earthquake, and the surfs don't do much to Xatu after a Calm Mind. Solrock comes out to replace Claydol, and then Xatu goes for a Confuse Ray, so of course Dwayne hits himself in confusion instead of hitting a Rock Tomb. The next turn, I switch Dwayne out for Igneous and hit a Surf to knock out the Solrock. But Lapis is now in the red after a Psychic from Xatu, so I switch Lapis to Granite as they heal Xatu. A Psychic from Lunatone hits Granite hard, as Igneous does shockingly little damage with Rock Slide. Unfortunately, it's clear here that we're not getting out of this without somebody taking one for the team. So I let Granite go down, and I bring in Quartz, who gets hit by a Psychic from Lunatone, as Igneous does another small chunk with Rock Slide. Here, the AI sees the kill on Quartz, so I switch Igneous out for Dwayne and go for a Fly with Quartz. Hopefully Fly knocks out the Xatu, and Surf is enough to one-shot the Lunatone. On the next turn, Fly connects, but it leaves Xatu with what looks like 1 HP, allowing Xatu to take out Quartz with a Psychic. No Flygon this time, I guess. A final Surf from Dwayne knocks out Lunatone, winning us the Gym Badge, but losing Quartz is really brutal. Before fighting Juan, Ore evolves into Donphan, and I catch Slate again. I decide to make Slate a physical attacker this time, but the strategy for Juan remains the same, so we can skip that fight. And with that, I'm back at the Elite Four. This time, our team is slightly different. Donphan, Sandslash, and Camerupt have replaced Flygon, Rhydon, and Nincada. So let's see if our new team has what it takes to make it to the end. Signy, as usual, is pretty easy. I lead Sandstone to eat the Intimidate and do some damage with Return, and then Dwayne comes out and takes it out with an Earthquake. Cacturn is out next, so I switch to Igneous and a Flamethrower burns it to a crisp. Next is Crawdad, so a switch to Lapis and a few Earthquakes knock out the Crawdad, as it just wastes time using Swords Dance. Next is Shiftry, so another switch to Igneous and another Flamethrower take it out. Last is Absol, who flinches Igneous with a Rock Slide, so a switch to Dwayne and a few Earthquakes finish it off. Next is Phoebe, who goes down to a Slate setup. Since Slate is now physical, I've taught it Shadow Ball, so it's pretty easy to clear through her Ghost types. For the sake of time, I'll skip this battle since it's really long, but it's not much different from the previous Phoebe fight. This leads us to Glacia. My last fight with Glacia was pretty sloppy, so I decide to go for a slightly different strategy this time. This strategy is to PP stall the Celio and then set up with Slate. I realize that this isn't exactly the most noble strategy, and it's also not the most exciting thing to watch over and over again, but honestly, I've been put through the ringer in this challenge, and it's too reliable of a strategy to not do it here. So after Celio has been depleted of PP, and I've set up 6 Cosmic Powers and a sub with Slate, we start taking out Glacia's Pokemon. The only problem is that by the time I get to Walrein, I'm actually out of Earthquake PP, so I have to switch to Dwayne to finish him off with an Earthquake. But that's Glacia defeated. Next is Drake, who's another victim of Slate's Cosmic Power Sweep. Even with no special attack EVs, Ice Beam does a lot of damage, so it's not too difficult to clean through Drake's team. And with that, we're back to Wallace. This time, instead of using Earthquake with Dwayne, I make sure to use a move that won't kill Wailord even if we crit. Then, it's just a bunch of PP stalling, which has pretty much become the MO of the team in the late game. Fortunately, Wailord only knows Double Edge, Rain Dance, Water Spout, and Blizzard, which is just 30 PP total. So it doesn't take as long as it usually does. Ultimately though, Igneous does die as we stall out the Wailord, marking the second Camerupt that I've lost in a championship fight. But hopefully Igneous' sacrifices won't be in vain. Once Wailord starts using Struggle, I switch to Slate and start setting up Cosmic Powers. After 6 of them, an Earthquake knocks out the Wailord. Tentacruel comes out next, but obviously goes down to a single Earthquake. And then third is Whiscash, who starts tanking Earthquakes. After a few turns, Wallace switches to Ludicolo for some reason. But fortunately, that gets us a free hit, and I'm able to take it out before it gets too many double teams off. What a relief. Whiscash comes back out and goes down to a few more attacks, as a Hyper Beam doesn't even break our sub. Milotic is next and goes down to 2 Earthquakes, as it just tries to use Toxic. Seriously, Substitute is a lifesaver. I'll try not to rely on it for every single challenge, I promise. Last is Gyarados, but I can definitely still lose this to an unfortunate crit, because Gyarados starts using Dragon Dance. And after 2 Dragon Dances, Gyarados decides to break my sub with a Surf, as Slate uses a Return to leave him with a sliver of health. A crit here would break through my Cosmic Power boosts and kill me, so this is scary. But Wallace goes for a full Restore, which honestly is even scarier, because Gyarados is now pretty poised for a Dragon Dance sweep. But on the next turn, Gyarados just goes for another Dragon Dance, and Slate hits a critical hit return, knocking it out before it gets a chance. And with that, we've defeated Wallace. Well, that was significantly harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought that this would be a pretty quick one-attempt run, but there were a lot of really tough battles that I wasn't expecting. This was by far the most trouble I've had with Wallace, and I certainly wasn't expecting to have to abuse Substitute and Cosmic Power as heavily as I did. But it was a lot of fun. I loved getting to use Flygon, and I had a blast playing through the game with Twitch chat, so hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like the video and subscribe. Or don't. I don't know. Oh, I also feel like people sometimes say ring the bell. So, yeah, ring the bell. I definitely know what that means, but if somebody wants to make it clear to everyone else, feel free to comment down below. And seriously, thank you so much to everyone who's made these videos as popular as they are. It means the world to me. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Twitch to keep up with streams of my future challenges. Speaking of, next up is the highly requested Hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Diamond using only Fire-type Pokemon. You all may have been kidding, but it's happening, whether it's possible or not. So as always, thanks for watching, and remember to always, always, always play around the critical hit, even your own.